Welcome into the Marvel Stuff Podcast. We're co-streaming with the Gotham City Rogues Podcast, and it's a celebration of 2 years of this podcast, David. You've been here for quite a while, the original editor, the original guy that helped us kind of bring this whole thing together. I took it and ran with it at one point, but we're glad to have you back. How do you feel? 2 years? You guys have been running Star Wars stuff for like 25, but how's it? It's pretty cool though. Your secondary podcast is still going, yeah?
Yeah, man, time flies by for sure. I can just remember it like yesterday. It's like, man, 2 years. I saw that post you made. It's like, wow, that's incredible, man. I mean, for you to keep it going too, because I told you at one point, I was like, I got too many things going on. I can't possibly edit this as
David,
well.
I'm with you, dude, because I did a second podcast for a year, which is the Gotham City Rogues right now. So I didn't
Yeah.
entirely give up on it, but I was like, no, we're switching to monthly. And I was like, we're gonna do a monthly podcast over here. And I think it's been working out pretty well. And we're actually here to talk about DC Gods and Monsters, the future slate of the DC universe. James Gunn hopped on and he gave us a big ol' update yesterday on just all the things that he's planning ahead. I think let's get your overall vibe, and then we'll kind of jump into the individual projects.
Yeah, I like that he kept his promise. He said before February 1st, we'd find out a little bit about what they're going to plan on doing. And of course, we knew he was going to do a Superman thing. He's been writing that. He busted out with, I think, midway through the announcement, he talked about Superman Legacy. But the first thing he talked about was the animated show. I forgot what the name of it.
Creature Commandos.
Creature Commandos, yeah. So that felt very Guardians of the Galaxy.
You stole the words right out of my mouth, David. I was literally like, this just feels like Guardians of the Galaxy all over again, because I myself consider like I'm a big time comic fan. I literally read comics every day of my life for the past like 5 years. It's no exaggeration.
Wow.
I have them on my phone. And Guardians of the Galaxy, like that took me from left field. That was a little bit earlier. That was before I was super deep into it. But I've been like, I'm a hardcore DC guy, and only a couple of these Creature Commandos characters look familiar. One thing I did find really important about his announcement is they're doing a concise universe, which is something that Marvel mostly does, but he went even further and said they're going to be taking the same actors that play the voice of the animated versions of the character and bring them to live action. And he also included video games, which is something that's completely unique to the DC universe. I guess Star Wars also does it, right? Technically,
Star Wars is kind of a hybrid, but he pretty much nailed exactly the way they have the WB configured right now is the way I want Star Wars to be kind of set up, where you have a creative head and you have an executive head, and the executive doesn't interfere with anything creatively, and the creative kind of knows part of the executive role with James Gunn and Peter Safran. Because right now we have Kathleen Kennedy. She's more executive. She's not really creative. So who knows what kind of project she kind of turned down that would have been epic. We have the Zack Snyder Rebel Moon coming out on Netflix, which is basically a Star Wars film, but now it's going to be more adult oriented, presumably. But going back,
excited though, going to be in the same universe, right? I think maybe that attributes a little bit to the success of Andor, which was a little bit skewed older, I would say. Not quite, probably to the same extent, but
yeah. But I do like the fact that James Gunn did specify Elseworlds.
Yes,
and
that was great.
I've been preaching that, and people have been arguing with me and disagreeing with me that you can have stuff on the side that's not in the proper continuity and just have cool stuff on the side. And that's going to invite other creatives.
Star Wars, they seem like they tried it with, what was it? Star Wars Visions. Yeah. Which it's, I agree with you 100%. Me and Noah preach up and down on this podcast and Gotham City Rogues all the time that some of the like imprint stuff is the best stuff. Like DC comic books are fun and they're my favorite, but DC Black Label, which is an imprint that's geared towards adult, is my favorite comic books, period. And like every series they put out, it's something that I want a piece of. So the fact that they could maybe translate that into a live action animated video game hybrid universe, like sign me up, dude. This is going to be great. The ones he specifically said that are going to be considered Elseworlds was the Batman trilogy with from Matt Reeves, and it was confirmed that it was a trilogy. I think everyone kind of knew it was coming, but it wasn't quite confirmed, so now we know that's happening. Todd Phillips' Joker series is also Elseworlds. Teen Titans Go, and I believe there was one other one, Superman and Lois from the CW. Those are the ones that are considered Elseworlds at this point, so that makes a lot of sense. But I guess let's talk about the projects that he started his announcement off with, like the projects that were already kind of finished or put into place or some sort of phase of production that they're not going to scrap it. So we've got The Flash coming up. We got Shazam coming up. Outside of that, it's Blue Beetle. Mm-hmm. And I believe there was one other one. What was the last one? Aquaman 2. Aquaman 2 was the last one. Yes.
And that was supposed to lead into Superman Legacy, apparently.
Yes. I'm interested to see how he's going to pull it off, but I find it a little weird that he's not considering those Elseworlds. So are we kind of keeping some of those castmates? I think it was very highly, I think it might have even been confirmed that Jason Momoa is going to be returning as Lobo in the DC universe as opposed to Aquaman. So I don't know how they're going to explain that away. I do think that the universe reboot is going to make a lot of sense when the Flash comes around, because that's kind of how it was set up. Apparently, from audience reactions and professionals in the business that like have watched this movie, they say it's one of the best superhero movies that's been made, which is very high praise.
And that's what James Gunn said. One of the greatest superhero films ever made. And he had nothing to do with it. He wasn't at Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I think he's kind of getting, the short end of the stick a little bit, because there are some things that were put into play long before he took over, or even shortly before he took over. Like, everyone's like, why would you fire Henry Cavill? But he specifically said, he's like, listen, I like Henry Cavill, but he was never hired to play Superman in this new universe. He got to do a cameo in Black Adam, and we didn't hire him in our universe. That doesn't make, I don't think their relationship is terribly bad. Like, it wasn't James Gunn's fault. Another one, Doom Patrol and Titans, which are both HBO Max series. I watched Titans religiously. I've watched a little bit of Doom Patrol. Both pretty good series. Those are both getting canned after season 4. That was a decision that was put on before James Gunn was involved. So there's a lot of plates that were already spinning before he got there, and he's just kind of picking up the pieces. And I think he's showing a bit of grace that he's taking things on. He's really taking control. He's announcing all these things that are in his mind. And I think he's a really smart guy. So I don't think that I think the future of DC is bright as of right now. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think James Gunn is super intelligent. When he really came into his own and really showed his chops with the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's one of my favorite films of all time. I watch it every year. I usually watch it. It's kind of strange, but I usually watch it around the 4th of July. For some reason.
That's interesting.
And it's usually like my go-to like barbecue movie for some reason. I don't know.
Sure, man, why not?
But yeah, I love it. I've already like worn it out with my family. My family's just like, yeah, we don't want to watch this again. But I remember going to the theater and watching that movie and thinking like,
how are they gonna pull this off?
It's another one of those. It was one of those projects where you knew it was a talking tree, a talking raccoon. How is this gonna work? Can they pull this off? And this was James Gunn's deal, and he pulled it off. Totally obscure characters. Nobody knew who Star-Lord was, or Rocket, or Gamora.
Hardcore now comic book fans, David. Like, I mean, I've always geared more towards DC, but like I read Marvel comic books too. I didn't know who these guys were. I was like, the announcement came out of nowhere for me, and I was like the go-to nerd that everyone would ask things about, and I was like, dude, you got me on this one. I don't know who they are. This is gonna
I had a tiny inkling of who they were because I'd seen pictures before. But I remember at that Comic-Con where they flew from England to San Diego, they were shooting for 2 weeks, and James Gunn brought a trailer that was like,
that's cool.
It didn't have finished effects or anything, but I mean, it was a cohesive, understandable trailer, which was super awesome. And I remember the critics were saying, okay, well, this is going to be the first misstep by Marvel. And this became one of the best films, in my opinion, of all time for the MCU. And it just put James Gunn up there in the big
in the stratosphere. Yeah, it's interesting because like I historically on this podcast, like I poo-poo on Guardians a little bit only because it's not really my style. But I love James Gunn, and I can respect that he took these obscure characters and brought them to life. It's the spacefaring nature of it all. Like some of it I just can't get on board for. I could never be a Star Trek fan. I like Star Wars to a certain extent. Some of them I'm like on board for, but I still haven't finished Boba Fett, guys. I'm sorry if that makes me a bad fan. I started watching Andor, but it's just the space thing that kind of gets away from me, and that's where Guardians kind of felt. But James
Boba
Gunn
Fett never goes into space.
Fair enough. That's fair. But you know what I mean. That is true. Very true. I accept your criticism there. But James Gunn, he went over to DC as soon as he got fired from Marvel because of some old tweets, which cancel culture, you say what you will about it. I don't want to harp on it too much.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think about that? I mean, the stuff that he
some
tweeted
of it's
like
nonsense
10 years ago.
Some of it's nonsense. Yes, there were some inappropriate tweets that but they were clearly jokes. He's not a comedian, so I think that's where it gets a little bit dicey because, like, I don't know, comedians are always known like they're trying to push the label, and that's kind of their job. That was not James Gunn's job at that point.
Yeah.
But, people say dumb stuff on the internet, and I'm glad that Marvel eventually decided to just kind of let it go. I think it might have a little bit to do with the fact that he went to their rival, which I don't even really consider them rivals at this point in time. But at the time, he jumped over to DC, did Suicide Squad, which did, really well. It was like a spiritual sequel to the first Suicide Squad movie, and it was infinitely better. And then that spun out into Peacemaker, which we reviewed on the Gotham City Rogues podcast, myself and Noah. And one of my favorite shows
great
that
series.
I've seen in so long. It's so funny. Rated
R. He wrote it during the pandemic. Yeah.
Right. John Cena is whitey tighties. Like, how can you go wrong, man? That show is great. So that's when I realized I'm really on board for James Gunn. I got no problems with him. And I loved the Guardians Christmas special. I'm looking forward to Guardians 3 more than I'm looking forward to Ant-Man 3, which is coming even sooner. They're both going to be okay, I'm sure. They might even be good.
I think they'll both be pretty good. I think the connective tissue towards the future of the MCU is really kind of worth just going to see Ant-Man, even if you're not a fan of that franchise or of Ant-Man or whatever. But
it's going to be very relevant to the universe, which is going to be something different. That's for sure. I like that idea. Now, moving back to, I guess, the thing, you're self-admitted not as big of a DC fan as you are, obviously, of Star Wars and Marvel. So why don't you tell me just a little bit about your experience with DC, what you really like, and then we'll kind of go into these announcements and take it from there.
So for me personally, I grew up with the toys first. I'm not sure if I bought them because I was like a toddler, but I always had a Superman, a Wonder Woman, a Batman, a Green Lantern, and I have Polaroid pictures of me playing with them alongside with the Star Wars toys and my He-Man toys, G.I. Joes. So
he does not discriminate, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I never knew what Green Lantern's powers were until I was like an adult, maybe. I just knew he had a ring. He was really cool. Then when the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, I really liked it, and everyone crapped on it and hated it.
Because they know how much better of a character Green Lantern actually is than that movie is what it happened.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and once Batman 89 came out, it was a huge deal. I remember going to Walmart the night it came out on VHS, and there was a ton of people from my town in that Walmart, and those things sold out quick, and that it was a really big deal. And at that point, before that was the Christopher Reeve Superman, which was a big deal in my house as well, and of course the John Williams score. And as much comic book reading as I could do, I did while I was at the grocery store. I could never buy comics. My parents would never let me buy them, really. But when I got older, I started buying more and more comics and tried to read as much as possible. Then, of course, with the development of the internet and YouTube, I would just go out there and look at different storylines. And of course, Comixology on the phone.
Comixology is great.
I subscribed to that, and I read a couple things there, and really Watchmen was like a big turning point for me. That got me more into comics, and of course Zack Snyder's Watchmen was huge for me. Of course, the TV show with Damon Lindelof, whom I'm a big fan of. He's about to do probably a series of Star Wars films which will be announced here in London here pretty soon at Celebration. But I've been a DC person. I kind of left out all the Batman movies after '89. It was an event for me personally. Like Star Wars films, you got to go see it opening weekend at the movie theater. Batman Returns was awesome. It was darker, but I love the fact that Penguin was there and Michelle Pfeiffer was awesome, the Catwoman. And then Batman Forever with Val Kilmer, and Batman and
Robin.
Was after that. But also the other thing too, I don't know if you remember, but QVC, that cable channel.
Okay.
They would do this big sell of the merch before every single Batman movie, and I would look forward to that, to see all the merch that was being sold for those particular movies before the release, and it was just a whole thing. And then the McDonald's merchandise.
I have a lot of that stuff. So I was
cups.
And there was a trading card set for Batman Forever. In case you didn't know, I have trading cards for it. So
I have the complete set of Batman '89.
Very cool.
It's in my closet right there.
Yeah, I won't harp on my history because I'm clearly an established Batman nerd. But yeah, it was like the Batman animated series. I had a blue Batman toy I took with me everywhere, and then all the movies. I watched Batman Forever and Batman and Robin hundreds of times as a child, and my parents probably are just so annoyed by that. So the DC love runs deep. I love myself some Marvel, of course, but I'm always going to be a DC boy at heart. So I was like, hey, we got a big announcement, maybe. And James Gunn even said that he's going to kind of look to Marvel as inspiration and might even work with some of the people that he worked with over at Marvel. So
I think that's foregone conclusion.
Yeah. Batista, the movie. Apparently not. There was consideration of him playing Bane, but then they might want to go younger for him. So we'll see what happens. But let's talk about what actually was established. We'll do the TV shows first. I've got a graphic here. We've got covering our faces a little bit, but we got Waller, Lanterns, Creature Commandos, Booster Gold, and Paradise Lost. Now, we talked about Creature Commandos for just a second. It's an animated series, and like we said, this is very Guardian style. I don't know these guys. The only two that I recognized were Frankenstein. He's in everything. He's in an organization called Sword. I believe that's DC. And then I recognized Weasel. Yeah, that's what I mean. Is I think Frankenstein is in both Marvel and DC. So that's where.
And I think Bride of Frankenstein is in there too.
Yeah, that it's gonna be super weird. But those are the only ones I recognized was Weasel and Frankenstein. So this is a little bit beyond even my purview. So I'm excited to kind of jump into it. And it's James Gunn, so it's probably gonna be a rated R cartoon show, and it's gonna be fantastic. But the important things, the rest of them are live action, the ones that were announced. Let's talk about Waller. Viola Davis is staying on board. Definitely a smart move. She's a fantastic actress. I don't know if you could really even try to cast Amanda Waller better. She just kind of embraces that role fully. Maybe Waller in the comic and the show, she was very heavy set, and Viola Davis is definitely not, but that's literally the only real distinction there.
Right.
How do you, in the way that it was described in his quick video, how did you feel about where was your excitement 1 out of 10 for this Waller series, would you say?
Well, for me, for Waller, it's a show that's gonna have to bring in superhero after superhero and different situation after different
enemy of the week. But he did confirm there's going to be Suicide Squad characters jumping over onto the show, so some Peacemaker might be pretty cool.
Peacemaker for sure. I don't doubt James Gunn at all, but I'm just kind of wondering if you're going to have Amanda Waller at the center of all this. How are you going to really kind of do this? Is she going to be the dramatic anchor to all the action that's happening and all the tasks that are being performed here?
That's an interesting point, because Amanda Waller herself is very intense, and I think the drama of her could go along the lines of House of Cards, where she's kind of like a Frank Underwood type of role, where she seems like she's laid back, and I think there's some violence thrown in there. But you make a very good point that we're also doing a superhero show, so the House of Cards was not known for its action sequences, obviously. So it's going to be an interesting combination, but trust the process. I'd put myself at I'll go with 6 out of 10 for this Waller TV show, I would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, she feels almost like a less active Nick Fury in a way, you know?
A little bit, yeah.
And it's like, it's like, is this going to be really an Amanda Waller show, or is this going to be like a way to like surprise fans on who shows up on the next show? You
she
know,
might be like a narrator telling a story about the characters of this specific mission. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that could go about it, but you are completely correct that she's not known for her field work, I guess we should say. She does occasionally kill an office full of people, but that's about the extent of it. She's not going to go toe to toe with Killer Croc. Exactly, Killer Croc. Okay, I'm gonna just I don't know which order he announced them, but I think probably the show I'm most excited about is Lanterns.
Yes, me too.
Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan.
Yep.
This has been long rumored to be an HBO Max series. I think it like lost its creative director. I don't know, that showrunner. It's been a mess because this was announced a while ago, but I'm glad that it's been re-announced and they didn't just can it like they did, say, Batgirl. Because Lanterns, I'm stupid looking forward to. I also grew up on the Justice League animated TV show that was early 2000s.
Legion of, well, not 2000s, but late 80s for me. With the
you're talking about DC Super Friends,
Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, I guess I was gonna say I meant Justice League as in like Tim's Justice League. That's hilarious. I also watched your show too, though. Yours isn't as cool. You got those lame Wonder Twins. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But what I was saying about that is just Jon Stewart, it made him my favorite Green Lantern. Like, he was Green Lantern to me. I didn't know who Hal Jordan was. Yeah. So I get that he's not even the original Green Lantern. We won't get into that though. Alan Moore is the original Green Lantern if you want to get into like the nitty-gritty of it. But he's the well-known, well-established DC Green Lantern. He's been the Green Lantern of Earth for ever and a day. He's gone through a lot of different versions, but he's got a very complicated history. I'm wondering where this show is going to take place within that history. Is he going to be an established Lantern? Is this early days? How are they going to involve Jon Stewart? Because the two of them, they cross paths, obviously, because they're both Green Lantern, but because they're two different guys, like they were mostly disconnected in their stories for a lot of, I guess, DC history.
Yeah, the way I always understood it was one lantern for one sector of the universe. So if there's two lanterns on Earth, are there stories happening simultaneously? Are they working together, which would be cool? Are they going to break kind of the continuity?
I think they broke the rule just within the comic books because they also have oh shoot, I'm gonna just be so mad. There's a couple other Green Lanterns that are also from Earth. Like obviously there's Kyle Rayner. And oh man, I don't have all of them that I can just pull out of my head right now when I normally can. But Jon Stewart's my favorite. I'm really excited to see that TV show. I mean, there's no doubt about it. What do you think the tone's gonna be? Is it gonna be kind of dark space?
Well, they said True Detective, like so like kind of like a kind of almost like a kind of noir detective story in a way, and maybe not have their powers as in the forefront, but have it like kind of a reminding of the audience that yes, you are watching a comic book show, and not have them as featured. Maybe that's really what I kind of visualize when James Gunn said it's going to be very terrestrial, which is going to be Earth based, and they're going to be concentrated on Precinct Earth, and they're going to uncover a mystery and unravel a mystery that's going to have greater implications, which sounds like that's going to build off of something really big. But for a TV show, that I think that's really kind of the only way to go is to stay on Earth and to lower the budget and when the effects happen, make them like really cool, but make it service the story. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, they can't go the same way that they did with the Ryan Reynolds movie, where it just looked like Hot Wheels. It just looked like the Hot Wheels set and just all this weird nonsense that was way too expensive at the time. Is Alan Scott, not Alan Moore? Don't want no one at me. But I had to look up the other guys I was thinking of. So there's a new guy called Simon Baz who's pretty cool. He's got some Middle Eastern heritage, which he's a fun character. Jenna Cruz, she's, I believe, a Mexican American. She's another one. So there's a lot of Green Lantern's from Earth, so I don't know what exactly is going on there. Another famous one is Guy Gardner. He's famous for being Tool and mad all the time, and he became a Red Lantern at one point.
But I'd love to see Sinestro.
Yes. They have to do Sinestro. I think that there's that, and then Parallax is actually something that Hal Jordan becomes, so I don't know if maybe they'll do that later down the line, but then it gets into the space venturing thing, so it's complicated, but I put myself at an easy 10 for this show. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, interest and anticipation and hype, I'm all over it because Green Lantern has been rumored for so long in live action. Yep. It was like 10 years, 15 years, and it's just like we're finally going to get
the fact that Zack Snyder shot a Green Lantern scene and then they ended up replacing it with Martian Manhunter because they weren't going to allow him. I mean, it's because of a show like this.
That was really okay, he like shot it in his driveway or something.
Yeah, he did. He shot it in his driveway. I'm like, you gangster, Snyder, dude. I respect Zack Snyder. He might not be like the best guy ever, but I like a lot of what he did. So
he's got a lot of fans, man. I mean, a lot of people
does have a lot of fans. We got the Snyder Cut, man. 4 hours on HBO Max, and you know who watched it day one? This guy. You know who watched the gray version of it again like a day or two later? Also this guy. DC love runs deep. Now the next one on here is Booster Gold, who I got familiar with again from the Justice League animated TV show. A little bit in the comics. There's a couple different Blue Beetles. He's known for being like partners with Ted Kord Blue Beetle, and not Jaime, who's going to be played by the kid from Cobra Kai.
Solo Mariduena, I believe.
Something like that. Yeah, he's young Hispanic boy playing Jaime, and it's gonna. I'm really excited. It's a really good casting. But Booster Gold, how do you feel about this show? Do you know a lot about Booster Gold? Is he kind of like one of those ones that are kind of pushed to the back a bit?
I don't know a lot about Booster Gold. I do know a little bit. I know that Booster Gold has been making the rounds in talks of being made by DC for years and years now. It's just with all the kind of upheaval with DC and the unsureness there. They just never really wanted to pull the trigger. And now when you have the steadiness of Safran and Gunn, I think it was a perfect opportunity. And I think they have tons of interest, tons of scripts, tons of actor ideas for Booster Gold. And I think the premise is very interesting as well. And I saw a fan cast today for Glenn Powell. I thought that was a pretty good fan cast. I think Rooster from Top Gun Maverick, yeah.
Oh, you talking about Miles Teller? Is that what you're talking about?
No, Glenn Powell.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You said
Maverick. Have you seen Top Gun Maverick?
I haven't, but you said Miles Teller. You said a character. I was like, oh, Miles Teller, but that'd be a weird casting. So I was a little bit thrown there. But Glenn Powell, got it.
Yeah, I forgot what his call sign was, but yeah, it's Glenn Powell. He's been in a few things, but he's from Austin, Texas, I believe, and he attended UT. So I thought that was an interesting pick. Initially, I was thinking like Zac Efron, but then I saw other people's picks, and I was like, yeah, Zac Efron might not be the best. But other people were saying like Nathan Fillion, but he's getting a little too older.
He's a little bit old, yeah. I believe he's played like Tick. He's been in a lot of things, Nathan Fillion. So he's a Firefly, and he's done his work. He doesn't need to come back and play Booster Gold unless he wants to. I guess feel free, but they're probably going to go younger with that character, especially because we're talking 2025, I think, or 2026 for Booster Gold. I don't even know where it's falling into as far as this timeline goes. Yeah, but I'm excited about it. I like the idea of a loser from the future coming back to the past. His episodes on the animated series were great. I just read, I think it was called Flash Forward. It was a DC crossover event, and he had a starring role in it with Harley Quinn. I was a big fan of that as well. So there's a lot of good things going for him. And I think the show's going to be good. He's never been like one of my top guys, so I'll put it at a 5 out of 10 for me. How you feel?
I want to say 6.5 out of 10.
6.5. Okay, fair enough. A little bit more love for Booster Gold than me. Respect. The last one, which I think I'm pretty pumped about, is Paradise Lost. And the way he kind of explained it, he said a little bit of Game of Thrones Westeros, but on Themyscira. And I've been thinking that they should do something like that for at least 5 to 6 years because I watched Game of Thrones. I was like, what if they did this, but with the DC heroes at Themyscira? It's an idea I had years ago. Obviously, I'm not in charge of any of this stuff, but I was like, they kind of got this like a similar vibe. And I was like, I really think like a cool drama set on Themyscira would be fantastic. And that's exactly kind of the way he described it. It's going to be an action series. How do you feel about this one? You excited? We're not getting Gal Gadot anymore. That's a little bit of a bummer, I will say.
I like the premise. I like where they're going with it. If they can establish really good characters and make it, if they can get even a little bit close to Game of Thrones, I think it'd be a huge success because Game of Thrones is fantastic, especially the new House of the Dragon series.
Oh, the Dragon was so good. We reviewed it on there. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's outstanding. Gal Gadot, I believe, is actually going to be a producer on the show. So we might get like some type of like epilogue or something.
I like how James Gunn, like I think in every one of these discussions, at least all the ones that have been made public, he kind of like says like there's the door isn't closed. If you want to be involved, like when he had a talk with Ben Affleck, apparently there's discussions of him directing a movie a little bit later down the line. And then Henry Cavill, he didn't write off like a Kingdom Come story in like a few years when you actually need an older Superman. And I mean, just a little sidebar about that. The Henry Cavill getting recast, like him not being Superman anymore. It's a bummer, but also I can totally see where he's coming from. They're going young Superman, Henry Cavill, super handsome guy. I love him in The Witcher. I love him as Superman, but he's not young. He's like 40. He's not 25 anymore. And that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah. But pun intended, it flies in the face of what they kind of announced because they want to do Elseworld stuff too. Why couldn't you just do an Elseworld Henry Cavill stuff?
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it's kind of like unless he would have the reasoning to not do that with like the Diamond characters. But then again, you're gonna have like 5 Batmans, you know? I mean, and he's considered one of the Diamond characters. So I don't know. It's that one's a strange one to me. I don't know if there's something in the background behind the scenes or.
I don't know. I was just really annoyed that like the previous bosses were like, yeah, you're back. And they did in the cameo. And then James Gunn's like, well, I mean, sorry, but they put me in charge and I've got a different plan. But then in that time period, I don't know if that's why he left the role of The Witcher. It seemed pretty obvious to like most people that was why he left. The Witcher was to be Superman. And then that happened. And I was really irritated because I love The Witcher. But he's got Warhammer coming now, and he's stupid pumped about that. So let's not worry about him. Okay, he'll be fine. Mission Impossible. It's not like the guy's gonna go be homeless or something. He's just not gonna be Superman for a while.
Yeah, he's one of the few actors that's like truly beloved. It's like I think Henry Cavill is like approaching like Keanu Reeves type love.
Yeah,
you know?
He really is. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's because he's a true nerd, and like nerds love a like-minded individual. The fact that he builds his own PCs and makes Warhammer diorama or the little figurines.
Yeah, puts PCs together. Incredible physique. He looks like Superman. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I absolutely love the story of the casting of Superman when Zack Snyder had all the potentials, the finals, walk in wearing a Superman costume. He said they laughed at everyone when they walked in except for Henry Cavill. They're like, whoa.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
That's how they figured out Henry Cavill was going to be Superman.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, yeah, I've never been a Superman fan. It's pretty well established because I'm on the Batman side, but you got me with Man of Steel. You got me on that one. That was a good movie, and I like Henry Cavill. So the rumor
I gotta say this too. So Man of Steel, when I saw it the first time, I didn't love it. I thought it was all right. Then I saw it again, it got better. And each time I see that film, it gets better.
It's because everyone was used to Christopher Reeves, like happy-go-lucky, white bread Superman. And he was great for his time. And then they went dark and gritty because of the success of the Dark Knight trilogy. So some people felt that they went too far in the opposite direction with Superman trying to make it grittier, but it kind of worked for the Snyder universe, I would say. And I liked every one of the Superman appearances with the exception of Joss Whedon's Justice League, which was garbage.
Yeah, it's almost like Zack Snyder didn't have his finger on the pulse of the culture and what they wanted from Superman. Everyone wanted the Boy Scout type of story with Christopher Reeve. I don't know what James Gunn's gonna do. It seems like he might go the Boy Scout route and then totally go total 180 with Supergirl, which we'll talk about later, I guess.
I try not to do rumors too much, but they're he's the actor, the front runner for Superman, or at least what the one that's like rumored. It's Jacob something. He's from Euphoria. He plays like kind of the bully. Have you ever watched Euphoria?
Not really, no.
Okay, yeah. I mean, maybe that's a little bit young for you. I don't know. I like it. No offense. I mean, maybe it's like teeny drama kind of, and then like they got drugs and stuff. But Jacob Elroyd, he plays Nate Jacobs in Euphoria, and he's early mid 20s, and he's definitely a good looking dude. So I could if he puts on he's already pretty buff, but to be Superman, maybe put on a little bit more muscle, which I don't think will be a problem. So I don't want to go into rumors too much, but that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, Paradise Lost. We totally went on a Superman rant. They might include like Nubia. I love anything to do with mythology. Yeah. If they got that stuff involved. Artemis, which was another like Wonder Woman knockoff. We got Wonder Girl. There's a lot of characters that you could really explore on Themyscira, and you don't even have to have Diana Prince if you don't want to. I mean, I don't think she's 100% necessary. She would definitely bring some oomph to the role. They might even like this is purely speculation, but they might go where she's young, and then there's the politics of the entire Themyscira like island that's going on, and she's kind of there, but she's a child version of Wonder Woman. We'll see what they do. But that kind of wraps it up on the TV shows. I'll give Paradise Lost. I'll give that one an 8. I would say.
I say 7.
7, fair enough. All right, on to the movies, and this is where it gets a little juicy, I would say. We got first on the docket, Superman Legacy. It's not an origin story, which is what kind of threw me just a tad. It's like Superman year 2, it sounds like, or something like kind of early in his career. He's still young. I think they're trying to like find some sort of in between like Smallville and Christopher Reeves, like somewhere in the middle, I think is where this one's gonna fall.
It feels like kind of like that thing that Marvel did with Spider-Man. It's like they didn't tell his origin story, they just like started him with his powers, because everyone kind of knows the story. I mean, by now,
if I have to watch Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot one more time, it's traumatizing every time, David. No.
Yeah, I want to see Daily Planet stuff. That's the stuff that I think old school Superman fans have been kind of wanting, and I think we got that promise after Man of Steel, but we didn't get our Man of Steel 2, so we didn't get to see.
Yeah, you got Batman v Superman. There was a couple scenes.
Perry White, Lois Lane. Yeah,
exactly.
So hopefully we'll see that, and see we'll see a lot more dramatic stuff, and it's going to be, I think there's going to be a big juxtaposition with another character that we're about to talk about here. But it's interesting that James Gunn is writing it. He'll probably maybe direct it, but I don't know. He's going to be a super busy guy. So I'm not sure if he's going to direct it. If you think of all these projects and all the projects he gave us on the slate,
he said he was writing a lot of them, and I think Noah couldn't make it to the podcast because of his internet, but that was one of his main gripes on the whole announcement, is like there was a lot of I'm writing, I'm working on, I'm doing this, and we all love James Gunn, but I like different flavors too, man, and I think they will get other people involved, but I really hope he distributes the work a little bit and gives other people a chance to have a voice in this universe.
So do you think James Gunn is going to be super hands-on everything since he's a creative?
He might start that way. I don't know. That's an interesting.
How would you do it? How would you do it?
Well, me being a huge nerd, I don't know how well I could do it, because I'd be going too deep and be like, so this is who we're going to cast as Nightwing's grandfather. And he's the Talon for the Court of Owls, so it's great grandfather, and yada yada yada. I'd go too deep on it. But in this respect, I think I like the Kevin Feige approach, but I also wouldn't mind a little bit more involvement, and that kind of seems like what James Gunn's trying to do. We'll see if he takes it too far. but I think the cohesive voice of the MCU kind of comes through because of Kevin Feige, and I hope that's still the case with James Gunn. The fact that he is a creative and a writer, and I don't know all of Kevin Feige's whole report or anything, but he didn't write any of the series or any of the movies. He's just kind of involved. So the fact that James Gunn's taken the reins on a couple of projects, I think might translate well to the overall product because he's not only supervising the universe, he's got an active role in it.
Yeah, it seems like Feige has like total veto power on creatives doing certain things because he's got a plan, he's got an outline for the way things he wants to see go.
I'd love to see his bulletin board, dude, with like the yarn and like the printed out paper. Oh my god,
the Charlie Day,
like beautiful mind of that. Yeah, yeah. We'll move on. I mean, we're kind of getting the two juggernauts out of the way because that's the order they're on here, and the other ones aren't as big. But I'm okay with it because, well, I'm the host and I do what I want. Batman, from the brave in the bold. You make a good point that it is kind of a juxtaposition because this has Damian Wayne in it, which he did not come along until far later in Batman's career. This is based on the Grant Morrison run, which I read part of, and it was good stuff. But the fact that they're going straight to Damian, which one I'm pumped about because he's one of the more interesting Robins as far as storytelling goes, and he's a complete opposite to Batman in a lot of ways. He was raised as like an assassin. He's Ra's al Ghul's grandson and the son of Talia al Ghul in Batman. He's just got all these legacy things that if they cast this kid right, he's the future. Like we're talking like it could be better. He could be like it's like Tom
like what Harley
Holland.
Quinn is.
Right. It's going to be like what Tom Holland is to the MCU. It's going to be a young guy you find early in the establishment, and then he's just going to go on for 15 years. If they keep putting out products, I think that's what's going to happen. So introducing Damian Wayne early is great. The only thing that I am a little bummed about is because I'm a Robin fan. The other three mains, Dick Grayson is my favorite character in all of comic books, but they did mention that the Bat family is going to play a part. So all right, and you give me a Nightwing movie a couple years later, I'm on board.
Yeah,
but we're not going to get to see the old school Rob. Like, when was the last time we saw like a true Robin live action story? Like early on, it was Chris O'Donnell in Batman Forever, and it's been a while. And you know, Batman and Robin, it goes together. You know, peanut butter jelly, everything. You know, there's a bunch of other things you can say, but without Robin, Batman, just he feels like there's a little bit of an emptiness to it. And the fact that we are skipping 3 Robins, I wonder if they're going to do all of the Robins. Maybe they'll just do Dick Grayson, maybe they'll do Jason Todd and Tim Drake. I don't know what they're going to do here. But back to it's just later in the career, and Superman's kind of at the beginning, which is a little bit weird, a little bit odd.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail totally on the head. I mean, Damian Wayne is going to be kind of the key, the crux. If they get that casting right, man, it's going to catapult and put that particular movie and that particular character in the mainstream. Like he's going to be up there with like Baby Yoda and Harley Quinn.
Exactly.
And he's just going to be one of those characters. And I like to think, going back to Game of Thrones, you look at the actress that's now on The Last of Us that plays Ellie. She was Lady Mormont. If it feels like they got to find someone with those type of acting chops, but like really young.
It's gonna be hard, man. They like to find a kid with like crazy acting chops like some of these people. It's gonna be a tough thing to do, but I think they know as well as anyone. Like obviously you have to cast the Trinity well because they're the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
But you know, they have the benefit of seeing what happens to the MCU. I'm not saying that they fizzled out because I love the MCU, but they have plateaued a little bit. And in a lot of people's opinions, they've declined pretty drastically since Endgame. So they get to see kind of how the timeline goes along as far as the zeitgeist of being a movie connected universe. So they get to see the successes and the perils that the MCU went through, which it was mostly successes. Let's be real, but they can benefit from seeing that, and I think that's going to be great for the DCU. They're gonna cast everybody the way they need to. They're gonna go young. They have to go young. They can't cast super old dudes. Like I saw something online where guys like, oh, they should cast Brad Pitt as Aquaman. I was like, no. How about no? How about we don't do that because he's 900 years old and he's still hot, which doesn't make any sense. But we don't need
Brad Pitt as Captain America in the 90s was my choice.
Yes, and that was 30 years ago. So,
and Mel Gibson as Wolverine in the 90s was also my choice.
Oh Lord! But I will say, back to the Brave and the Bold, I love that there's going to be a Damian Wayne. I'm curious how they're going to cast Batman because Batman, it seems like he's the only one that they're going to have to go a little bit older because not only like Robin was born in the comic books, he was like, Batman hooked up with Talia, and then he was grown in an artificial womb and all this kind of weird sci-fi stuff because they had to explain why he's a super great assassin at 10 years old. But you kind of have to have Batman at least in his mid-30s if you're going to say he has a 10-year-old son, unless they're like, oh, they accelerated the aging process, and I think that would irritate everyone. And this Batman will have the benefit of there already being a million Batman movies before it, so you don't need to do the origin story. There's a couple of characters that like they can exist, kind of what they did in the Batman. Like Joker was in Arkham, or in not quite Arkham yet. It's whatever that weird name of the prison is before they made it Arkham Asylum. He was there. You didn't need to explain that he was Joker or like why the Joker's there or how he's going to be involved in the story. It's just
it's all kind of
character everyone knows. Exactly. That's a good point. There you go.
Yeah. Do you think though there's a path for Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves Batman to transition into the Brave and the Bold?
I actually hope not. It's kind of weird, but I think that the Flash movie is going to kind of satiate some of that weirdness of like crossing Batmans because we got Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck are both in the movie. And they're both big enough characters that they can't just cut that as part of the Flash. So we're going to see double Batman. We're going to see a multiverse thing, and then they're going to reboot everything. So the fact that they would try and jump right back in, I don't support that. I love Batman. Like you said, he's a diamond character. Like you can have as many Batmen as you want. And I don't think it might confuse some people, but for the most part, like you can probably establish them as two different universes, and I think that's the route to go as far as that's concerned.
And I think in 2023, the people that get confused simply don't care; they just want to see a Batman flick.
Exactly. Yes, 100%. So, I didn't rate how much excitement I have for Superman Legacy.
I know I didn't either. 5?
I don't like Superman.
Dude, if you tell me 10 years ago or whenever Guardians dropped 2014, so almost 10 years ago, that James Gunn was going to handle Superman, I would have been like, oh my God, that's exactly, I want to see that. So I'll go 11 out of 10.
All right, David's on
like
board
super
for Superman. That's great, man. I'm excited for you, and I hope they do a good job. I'm not, if it's a good product, I'm not going to be skewed in my opinion. I'm just skewed in my excitement because that's just how I am. But the Brave and the Bold, oh yeah, give me an 11 out of 10 on that one because I'm the Batman boy here.
I'm also 11 out of 10 for that one. Damian Wayne is very, very intriguing, and of course, casting a new Batman. Seeing what the new villain's going to be, the League of Shadows connection, possibly.
Side note, I was stupid excited with the fact that he kept referencing the comic book that they're kind of going to be moving around for each one of these projects.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I was so excited with that because I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to reread Grant Morrison's run. I'm going to be pumped and ready for this.
The sales are going to go.
That's exactly what's going to happen. And let's do it, man. I love it. Brave and the Bold sounds great. The other ones on here are a little less exciting because they're not these giant world-changing characters, but I'm also excited for them just because sometimes you need a different flavor. I loved Moon Knight. I didn't know, a lot of people didn't know who Moon Knight was in 2010. They're like, it just wasn't a thing. Swamp Thing. He had a television show already that premiered on DC Universe. Then it moved over to like the CW Seed, and now it exists somewhere, and I still haven't watched all of it. I watched like 2 episodes of it. I was like, oh, this is interesting enough, and then I just never finished it. Do you know anything about this character per se?
Yeah. Okay. So in the 90s on TNT, the Swamp Thing movie would play, and I'd watch it, and it was so depressing, man. It was so like drab and dark, depressing, and it would just there was no internet to jump on afterwards to get like kind of lighten the mood.
Like happy puppy pictures.
You'd watch that, and you're just like, I got to go take a shower, man.
Humans suck.
And then like none of the actors were that famous too, and it's like I think it was
that's how I felt watching Punisher Warzone. I was like, what is this garbage?
Ray Stevenson.
I don't know.
He's gonna be in Ahsoka actually. But yeah, man, it's like super, super dark, depressing, kind of haunting. And he's just one of those characters. And I think Alan Moore had a run at him well.
Yes. Yep. He's good. I think Swamp Thing, it's an exciting project. I like some of the characters that are semi-involved with him. Like if we get some John Constantine action, because they're pretty closely related there.
Come back. He's waiting for
I thought he was confirmed and then he wasn't, and it's like it's a whole DC thing now again. But if they bring back Keanu for Constantine, I'm on board. But there was also rumors of an HBO Max where they cast POC as Constantine, and it was the main character from Gangs of London. I specifically watched Gangs of London. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name. I won't butcher it, but he's fantastic. He's so good in that show, and I'm really
What else has he been in?
I don't know. He's been in a couple other things. I looked through his IMDb, but that was like when they first announced that they might be doing this Constantine show, so I couldn't pull it off the top of my head. But I did watch Gangs of London because of that announcement, and he's great. So if they still pull off an HBO Max series with that Constantine, hell yeah, make that an Elseworld show, or make that the proper DCU, and then have Keanu Reeves be the Elseworld sequel. That's fine with me too. I love Constantine as a character. He made he made my top 10 heroes, which is pretty impressive because I'm a big comic book guy. So if we get like things that are involved with Swamp Thing, like there's also a connection with Poison Ivy, I'd be on board for that. Animal Man's a big one. I don't care for Animal Man. He's kind of a weird, obscure DC character that I just never liked much. And just as a side note, Black Lilac or Black Orchid. It was a weird, obscure comic book run that Neil Gaiman did, and that was his intro to DC Comics. I read that earlier or late last year, and it was pretty good too. So there's a lot of characters that are related to Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing himself, it's been done a couple times, but not to overall popularity. So maybe with this being a bigger budget thing and bigger names behind it,
and I believe James Gunn did point to the fact that it's going to be in the horror genre. So.
Horror genre. And sign me up for that because, I mean, Marvel did it with Werewolf by Night, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope they go rated R horror in DC, though. Like, there's some dark stuff in DC, and if they rainbow it up, I'm going to be pissed. The next one. Another team that I know a very little bit about, and it's the Authority. Sorry, I didn't pull up this graphic this whole time until right now. But if you guys are watching along, here's the list of them. The Authority is a comic book. They're a group of heroes. They're from the Wildstorm imprint. My familiarity with these guys is specifically Midnighter and Apollo. And I said on my quick little short that they are one of the most underrated DC couples, and I'm really excited to see that translated on screen. Midnighter had some crossover with Dick Grayson on his Grayson run when he was a spy. So that's how I kind of got introduced to Midnighter on like a different level. The way I would describe them is it's just like he's kind of a more brutal Batman. That's the way I kind of look at Midnighter. And then Apollo, he's I don't know, Superman-esque. He's pretty powerful, but I like the idea of like a super brutal, brooding Batman with like a Superman type person as like a couple. It's gonna be fun to watch. The rest of the team, not familiar with at all, but just based on those two being the forefront of it, I give myself let's do a 7. Let's do a 7 out of 10 on that one.
I'll do an 8 because this again feels kind of Guardians of the Galaxy-ish. No one really knows much about them. It's an obscure one. Yeah, and I mean it's a huge ensemble team that they put on the screen. That page, that panel. I noticed a hero with wings, with actual like angel wings.
Mm-hmm.
There were some like they were really like super like built out.
Do you have any familiarity with that team at all, or is this
not at all? This is pretty much the first time I ever hear of the Authority. So I heard some descriptions, and they were kind of like not really pinpointing like what they were and who they were.
Yeah, I decided yesterday when he made that announcement, I immediately went to Hoopla, which is my comic book app that's connected to the local library, and I get to rent comics for free. I immediately was like, okay, Midnighter comic book, Midnighter and Apollo. I'm going to read these later. So I'll get back to you guys. Sorry, we again did not rate Swamp Thing out of 10, though. What are you going on that one?
I want to say 8.
You're going to go 8? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I'll probably do a 6. Just because I've seen some Swamp Thing things before, and I don't know how it's going to go. Could go either way, but and I don't think anything's been under a 5. So there's nothing that I'm like not pumped about.
Yeah.
And on the final one, David, we have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now the way he described this one, it made it sound gangster. Dude.
Yeah.
The way he described it is Supergirl, because Superman was sent to Earth and he was raised by the Kents, and he just kind of, cornbread, white boy, and Boy Scout, like we kind of already touched on. But Supergirl had to go onto a part of Krypton and just watch her family and friends all die in front of her. And she was stuck on this thing for quite a while. And the weird thing is, like, she was technically older than Superman at one point, but the way that she like rotated around the galaxy and stuff, now when she finally does get to Earth, she's younger than Superman, and it's a whole weird thing. But Supergirl is a character that I'm just excited to see more of. I watched a little bit of the show, didn't watch all of it, but I liked her story in Injustice 2. I liked her storyline in Justice League Unlimited. There's a lot of things that I like about her, and the way he described it, it's like taking it up to 10. As far as like, she sounds like she's going to be a little bit more hardcore, which I'm all for edgy women. That's kind of
my Same here, man. I want to see the comic book brought to life. I want to see long blonde hair, classic suit, and just kicking ass everywhere.
Yeah, dude. Sign me up for that one too.
Run roughshod over everyone, all the villains, good or bad. I just want to see fights. I want to see. It could be the greatest female-led film of all time.
It could be, yeah. I mean,
action movie,
100% could happen.
And be like, oh my god, this is fantastic.
Yeah, give me 9 on that one. I'll go 9 on that one. I'm excited for it.
I'm gonna say 10.
You're good. Oh, yeah, because you went 11 on 2 of them. Yeah, 10's good. Yeah. There's DC, in my opinion, has a bigger catalog of powerful women, and the fact that they've kind of shorted their audience on seeing them represented on screen, with the exception of Wonder Woman and like the TV screen that got Supergirl. There's some really great like female characters that I really want to see. Like Zatanna is one of my favorite comic book heroes. Get her up in one of these things. Like, let's go, dude.
It's a head scratcher why we haven't seen her yet.
I know. It's
very popular at conventions.
Yes, she is. Yes. So yeah, more powerful women in the DC universe. Please sign me up. And I love that they're like, yep, female led. It's already on the original slate. Not that should have any bearing on whether or not it's a good movie, but I am excited to see more representation. That's for sure. And that was all the announcements. I don't know how he's going to tie video games in. He mentioned that, but then he didn't talk about any video games. There's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League coming out this year, but that was made years ago at this point, so it's nothing to do with anything. And I'm obviously going to play it because it's Rocksteady, who also did the Arkham series.
Yeah.
But future video games, I mean, that's another thing to be excited about. The fact that it's going to be kind of involved with the overall timeline of the DCU. I like how they're taking a couple pages out of Star Wars book, which clearly is your specialty, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, you sign the dotted line for the live action, for the TV show, for the film. You're going to be doing the voice for the video game, and you can do that anywhere on the planet. So just record your voice, send it in. It's done. And
takes a while though. It's like a couple hundred hours, depending if you're the main character. Ask Kevin.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, there's it feels like more of these games are going to be like tons of character centric, and I mean, if the game doesn't, if your name is not on the game, it should be fairly doable wherever you're at, doing another project or another film for another studio or whatever. So yeah, that's I kind of point to that because that's what Pedro Pascal did for chunks of The Mandalorian, because he was shooting The Last of Us physically, and then
doing the voice
on the actual show, he had stunt doubles in the suits.
Like, how much of him is actually him in The Mandalorian? It's kind of a weird situation,
like
but
35%. Yeah,
that's interesting. But he's moving forward. Like the new season, I imagine it's mostly him. Or is it
no, I don't. I think it's actually the least of what he's done for the 3 seasons, because he shot The Last of Us.
Yeah,
he shot The Last of Us while Mandalorian season 3 was happening.
Wonder Woman 84 might have crossed over in season 1.
Yeah, definitely. Man, that was not a good film.
No, it was not. But he was in it.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry a couple of our hosts couldn't jump along, but we love David from the Star Wars Stuff Podcast. He's one of the best podcasters I know, one of the best guys. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to talk some DC. It's my bread and butter. So at least I got to feel like more of a nerd than you for a couple minutes, because normally it's the other way around.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for having me. I was like, man, I hope Josh invites me on. I kind of want to talk about this. I'm super excited, super hyped. James Gunn is doing this, and the future looks really, really bright for DC live action, animation, gaming. So I'm happy.
Yes, sir. Happy 2 years to the Marvel Stuff Podcast. Catch us live a little bit later this week. Me and Coach will do an episode. It's going to be great. And then we got some Ant-Man stuff moving forward. Gotham City Rogues Podcast. I look forward to a fan cast of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that Noah and I did, and it was a good time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Wow. But once again, thank you, David. Feel free to hit me up whenever you need a guest or you want to hop on, because I'm game.
For sure. Yeah.
And to the audience out there, in the words of the immortal Coach, have fun, but not too much fun without us.
And may the